Live and local morning radio, coming to you from the studios of Magic Broadcasting on Laird. This is the Kramer Show. This is the Kramer Show. The phone is now open, and the phone operators are standing by. Turn down your radio when you call. Pay attention and be ready to go. 850-233-9988.
I said, if you're having the best time of your life right now, nigga, then yes, sir.
This is Kramer. Kramer.
It is I, ladies and gentlemen, 5 minutes after 7 o'clock on this glorious, beautiful Tuesday, April the 9th. Look outside. Look at it. Just look out. Look outside. It's beautiful. Paradise, I tell you. We got some down trees, of course. But we live in paradise. The sand is still here. Christ almighty, the sand is here. My yard, it's sand and weeds. Lots of sand, weeds, and ants. You guys having that problem? Ladies and gentlemen, I didn't bring him on to talk about weeds and ants, but ladies and gentlemen, the one and the only Scott Major from the Major Parúas law firm, the Storm Help Team, stormhelpteam.org, the one, the only, love and kisses you. Here he is. Put them together for Scott Major.
Hey, how you doing, pal?
I'm great. How are you doing, man?
Good. You know, there's a lot of different kinds of ants. There's citronella ants and field ants and carpenter ants and thief ants. There's all kinds of ants. We could have an hour on ants.
Well, I'll tell you, we got weeds, we got ants, we got bumblebees. We're soon to have plenty of mosquitoes. I got ants all in my yard. I was out messing around. I was doing some weed eating, and it seemed like every 2 steps I took, I'm stepping in ants, and I had them all over my shoes. I'm hopping around, I'm taking my shoes off. It's a fact of living here now. Lots of ants and lots of sand. And if
no doubt.
I know you're well versed on everything. Obviously, you know everything there is to know about ants and every type of ant, but if you can tell me how to grow grass in this, whatever kind of soil this is we have here, I will wash your car once every week.
Wow, that's ants are our future. I think we should learn how to harvest them and create them into food sustenance, because there is every kind of ant known to man. Amazon ants, leaf cutter ants, odorous house ants, crazy ants. There's actually honeypot ants. There's army ants. There's bullet ants. There's, let me think, pharaoh ants.
How do you know this? Why do you know this information?
There's weaver ants. There's, I'm trying to think, there's a lot of ants, a lot of different ants.
What are honeypot ants? What do they do?
Actually, what's interesting about, honeypot ants is that they love honey.
Really?
I mean, there's actually, all the different types of ants, depending on what their needs are, but most of the honeypot ants actually live, to be honest with you, they live in deserts and arid regions, and they really look like, sort of have that what's the word, they can hold 8 times their weight in honey, and that's how they came up with that funny name of honeypot ants.
So they're fat.
Yeah.
Fat and lazy ants. No, I was just going to say, if you want to get on the air with Scott Major and talk about ants, or we could talk about the legal process after Hurricane Michael, post Hurricane Michael, anything you want. It's 850-233-9988. 850-233-9988. The one thing about Scott over the past 6 months, the one thing that I think probably is the most important thing to learn from him, handling the insurance claim, or basically, mortgage company, whatever, whoever you're dealing with, when you have a correspondence, he always says, end the letter with love and kisses you. And to me, I think that's poignant in that it's okay to be frustrated, but don't lose your cool. back to honey. What do they say about, you get more with honey than whatever the saying is. But
more bees with honey.
There you go. More bees with honey. So I think that's an important process. Although, having said that, here we are right at 6 months, and people are, they're losing it, Scott.
Yeah. We talked about this months ago in that the frustration level would increase because a lot of the realities are setting forth that the insurance company knows that you don't have a lawyer involved oftentimes, or that you may not be savvy enough to know what needs to be done on your claim. And so until you file, a lawsuit, or until you get a lawyer involved, where there's a fear on the side of the insurance company that they might have to spend actually more money than just paying you, that's how that phenomenon, the paradigm seems to change. And I think that, people are realizing that now, and I encourage every listener, if you haven't been paid your money, and you don't know specifically why, in other words, you're not waiting on something, that you contact a lawyer and find out what your legal rights are. You should be getting paid your money, or there should be something specific that the insurance company is waiting for. For example, we have some cases where the insurance company wants a separate engineering report because there's a question about how much structural damage there is, and the estimate that was originally done was about the roof damage or about some window damage, but didn't have necessarily any foundational, damage support, no science for that. So that's an example of where an insurance company might need something more. Sometimes people haven't produced documents which are supporting their claim. But I can't emphasize enough that, if people's houses are not being rebuilt, if you're not getting the money, you need to escalate your steps up the food chain to getting, a more sophisticated person involved. That doesn't mean that your public adjuster can't do a good job or whatever, but they can't file suit. And while we get many, many claims from public adjusters between months probably 4 and 8, because they've either exhausted how much money they can get for you, or they've only gotten you a certain amount of money, or they're not getting any money because of some issue. It's really important for you to step forward and get lawyers involved. And you and I have seen the success that happens when you get, some lawyers who know what they're doing involved, who can look at some of the clauses that are critical to understand.
How often do you get brought in with public adjusters? Is that something that normally happens? Yes.
I get an amazing amount of claims, after, say between month 4, 5, and 8, because usually the public adjusters have the ability to get into the people's properties sooner because of the advertising rules that bar lawyers from doing door-to-door type stuff. And so a lot of the public adjusters have a huge advantage, and they get in and get a lot of cases, and they tell their clients they're going to get them all the money, and sometimes they do. But whether they do or not, they all have limits, and the insurance company knows that if they don't want to pay the full amount, what is the public adjuster going to do? They can't do anything but refer it to a law firm, and the law firms can then step in and get the money. So what happens is the adjusters will often get what they can, what the fat money they sometimes call it. That is the money that is definitely going to be paid. And then after that happens, they will call lawyers, almost 90% of the time and say, hey, can you help out the client to get them the rest of their money? And then the lawyers step in and get the rest of the money by filing suits or making complaints to the state, civil remedies notices, and things like that. You'd be surprised at how responsive insurance companies can be when lawyers get involved and they start complaining to the state and setting up this potential for bad faith and the exposure to them, that happens. But most of the time when I get involved, when I make a phone call to the desk level adjuster, they pay attention, and they tend to listen and to say, here's what I'm missing, or here's what we need. Let's try to get this done. Or if we're not going to get this done, let me tell you specifically why I'm not paying. I'm not paying because that fence is not covered under one of the policies, or you didn't provide the proper receipts for the ALE, the additional living expenses under coverage D, or I don't have a list of your contents with pictures and invoices or estimates of what the replacement is or the cash value of those items are. So usually we can home in and get to the heart of what the problem is quickly. But the insurance companies do succeed when you don't hire lawyers like myself, because they realize that they can continue to hold on the money, whether there is a good reason for that or a bad one. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. But I just can't emphasize enough, and you and I have talked about this sort of ad nauseum, that we just try to urge the listeners that there is nothing wrong with hiring a lawyer, and you're actually doing yourself a disservice by not getting a talented lawyer involved. Has nothing to do with whether you hire me or whoever your favorite lawyer is, to make sure you are availing yourself of every dollar of recovery that you contracted for. It's your contract. It's your rights. You're not asking for something you didn't pay for months, years, or in many cases, decades. So it makes sense for you to make sure you're getting paid all the money that you need to get paid so you can rebuild your property in the proper way.
Got Scott Major. Their website is stormhelpteam.org. To get on the air, 850-233-9988. To hop on the air and ask him a question, pick his brain. There's several. I mean, he'll know anything about anything that has to do with Post Michael. 233-9988. I've asked you about businesses here before, and I just had a candidate on for mayor of Panama City, and she and I were talking about businesses and how many of them are inoperable, and a lot of times, a lot of cases, they haven't even been touched. You can see buildings around here. Really, it really is. It just. I don't even know what the word is. It's just baffling to me that there are businesses, major businesses, that have not been put back together and are not even, they haven't even begun the process. Can you please explain to me how these big businesses, yeah, mom and pops, yes, but it's also big national chains, and they're just sitting there and they haven't even been touched. And you're talking about so many people's lives that have been touched by that business being down. Just think about how many people that one business being down has affected. Why is it just sitting there in ruin? Why?
I think most of the time it is based on ignorance, in that they may have some corporate counsel in some other state who doesn't necessarily know the mechanics of some of the nuances on the law. They may be in discussions with the insurance company, and nobody's really pushing it either way. People just don't realize the level of ignorance that people don't know. And as you and I spoke about from the very beginning, most people didn't even know lawyers do this. They didn't even know lawyers specialize in this area. And it's a very simple proposition. Whether you have a home, or you have a Sears, or a Lowe's, or whatever place you have, they're the same contracts from the standpoint of you buy insurance to ensure you're going to receive money in case of a covered peril, in case of a risk that occurs that's covered by the policy. And I just can't scream loud enough that if you're an employee of these companies and you're a listener, get on the phone and call your manager or the owner and ask them, why aren't they calling Scott Major? Why aren't they calling somebody to find out how they can get money freed up? And if they're 5 months into this process, 6 months into this process, and they haven't put a nail in a piece of wood, then they need to call either Scott Major or somebody and find out how to get their places rebuilt. This is your city. You and I have just as much interest in getting the subway back up as everybody else, whether we work there or not. We want our city back, and we don't want to be hostages to the failure of insurance companies to pay, or to the ignorance of people who don't know what their rights are. It's time for all of us as listeners to stand up and start yelling at the top of our lungs, please. We need to get paid the money we contracted for. And all I can do is tell you that I implore every business owner, every person who works for a business, no matter where you work, live, or drive, every place you're frequent, Tell those people, if your places aren't rebuilt or if they're not completely rebuilt, pick up a phone, call me or call the top lawyers you know, and find out why you're not getting paid. Every single structure that has insurance in the entire county should be being rebuilt. Every single structure. There isn't any dispute that 155 mile an hour plus winds came through that area. There isn't any dispute that every one of those properties has suffered damage, and if they have an insurance policy, they're entitled to some money. It's nothing short of idiocy or ridiculousness that insurance companies are not paying the money, and so the only reason is either they don't have the right person on their side in charge, or they don't have coverage. And it's usually the former, not the latter, because it's very rare. I can't think of a business that I can recall that didn't have coverage for insurance-related losses. So you're talking about an important imperative for all of us to be talking. So if you don't own the business, but you work there, if you frequent a place that's not open or not open all the way, get over to them and say, listen, it's a free phone call. 844-800-LAWS. It's a free phone call. Call up and at least find out what your rights are. Find out why the Amazon isn't being paid for, and you'll do well.
Got to take a break. Scott Major's with us, 844-800-LAWS, the phone number for him off the air. Stormhelpteam.org is their website. Scott Major from Major Parúas and the Storm Help Team. You got questions, it's time to light them up. We'll get some phone calls coming up. Stand by.
Kramer gets it. Kramer gets it. Do you? If you get it, call us. 850-233-9988. This is the Kramer Show on NewsTalk at 101. Now live.
Special program live from Uranus.
And local in the morning, right here in Panama City. This is Kramer in the Morning on NewsTalk at 101.
Scott Major with us. Scott Major from Major Parúas and the Storm Help Team. 844-800-LAWS. Scott and I have been on the air 5 or 6 months. I mean, we're at the 6-month mark of the hurricane, and he was on really quickly after the storm. In these 6 months, Scott, I wanted to ask you, have you seen, how does this compare with other storms that you've worked? Are we seeing the insurance taking an even longer time? Are there extra annoyances with this particular storm? Because I really hope that this is not protocol in all storms.
Well, I can tell you that there are massive delays in payments after every storm. This in the Panhandle, I think, is worse for several reasons. Number one, I think that the wonderful people of the Panhandle and Bay County are such trusting and faithful people that they relied on the word and the bond of their insurance company to do the right thing, and probably waited a little longer than ordinarily people, for example, in South Florida that have seen many storms and had some bad experiences have waited. Number one. Number two, the access to as many good vendors is less than there are in South Florida, for example. I'm just comparing because South Florida has suffered many storms. The insurance companies, in my opinion, have not paid nearly as much money as the experiences I've had with other post-storm events. They are paying in some ways. There is a slower movement by people to hire lawyers than there were in South Florida and other cases. Not necessarily dissimilar to that which happened in New York. New York, they had other coverage problems because a lot of people didn't even buy insurance. But I can tell you that the problem and the challenges that people face are similar. But I think the insurance companies here are paying slower, and I think there is more need for litigation sooner. And when I mean litigation, I mean getting a lawyer involved sooner at this storm, because there is a massive amount of damage across a widespread area. I think you are going to see some insurance companies go out of business. We have a recovery fund in Florida that comes up after that. But I'm very, very sad and frustrated because I want everybody to be hiring lawyers, whether they're me or somebody else, because I really think we can get the cities and county rebuilt faster if we could just band together the same way we used that phrase, 850 strong. I think we could rebuild our city sooner, and I think we could rebuild it in a way that would withstand the hurricane in the future.
When we get back from the break, I want to ask you about other ways things that we can do to recover quicker. And it's been a little while, been a minute since we kind of talked about some of those. And some of them may be a little surfaced, but I'm sure that you have other ideas. And I think it's really important to note as well that even still in this process, there are people that are having tons of problems. And Scott often says that, he does public. Would consider yourself a public speaker, correct? As well
Absolutely.
as an
I've
attorney.
done 250, public presentations. So sure, absolutely. I write motivational books. So yes, of course.
We throw that around. Maybe I'll ask you too more about your background, because sure. I did look you up. I can't remember when it was, but I did see where you do public speaking, and I read something about you writing books, and you're an author. If you really dig, there's a lot to Scott. Scott is a really smart guy who can really do some good help and come out and speak to groups. And we'll pick his ear about that too as well. 850-233-9988. Scott Major, stormhelpteam.org. More to come.
This is the Kramer Show on Panama City's information station, NewsTalk at 101. You're not dreaming. He's really back. He's really back. Back to Kramer in the morning on NewsTalk at 101.
Scott Major's with us. 850-233-9988. You got an issue going on with the insurance company, the mortgage company, a contractor, any kind of legal question. He will fire away. 850-233-9988. Before the break, we were talking about ways to decrease the time that it's taking to unclog the wheel and to get things moving. And to get us back to some semblance of normality around here, there's a lot to be done. But can you give us an overview of things that, as a whole, that we can do to decrease that time?
Sure. The first thing is for every single person who has not been fully paid, you should write a letter to your adjuster, to your insurance company, and ask them why they are not paying the estimate you've provided or the estimate they've provided. Every person should do that immediately or get a lawyer to do that. That's step one. Since it has passed 90 days since many of you have made a claim, if they have not provided you with an explanation, filing a complaint with the state called a civil remedies notice under Chapter 624 will get their attention for sure, or having a lawyer do it will get their attention even sooner. The third thing is to get as many people together on a block, in a neighborhood, in a church, in all businesses, and to try to get people like me to write letters on behalf of all of them, and to compare and contrast who has recovered money and who hasn't in a zip code or in a particular neighborhood or in a particular congregation, so that we can leverage successful claims against those that haven't been paid. So if your neighbor has been fully paid, even though it's a different insurance company, we can use that technique and call the insurance company and leverage them and say 50 feet away, you replaced their entire home or their roof or other damages, and we have an engineering report from another insurance company that shows that there was structural damage. Please explain to me why 50 feet away there was no damage to my property and you're not paying me anything. There are a number of other ways in that we can find out the reasons for why insurance companies are denying claims and use them in other situations. For example, we often find these cut and paste defenses. That is, that an insurance company sends you a reservation of rights letter that is a letter that says we're reserving our right to deny your claim. And oftentimes the information they put in there is not accurate as to your claim. It might be accurate as to somebody else's. That's a showing of bad faith and also a showing of a delay. And you can use that to expedite it. Getting me to come out to large audiences, chambers of commerce, congregations, business meetings, groups of people in a neighborhood, homeowners associations, condo associations, and having me educate all of you as much as possible on every possible angle you can use legally to get all of the money you're entitled to receive under your insurance policy is so critical to getting your claims going. Also, finding out from the cities, the mayors, the other people, why are there delays? In other words, are they having problem with city structures not being rebuilt? Are we finding that major businesses are having problems for a particular reason? Let's identify those reasons. And then there's a whole other panoply of suggestions I have relating to when you rebuild, how to minimize the chances for having problems like floodwaters coming in and other things by the way in which you rebuild and how you heighten and raise the level of your property.
It's probably also important, it might not be a bad phone call to make to see what kind of insurance you would be the guy to ask, what kind of insurance you want. We're coming up on the hurricane season again, and not to be overly paranoid, but I think it's important now that you pay attention to what is written in your policy and to make sure that, things like the ALE, make sure that that's in there and make sure that you have a really good, solid, and God forbid this to ever happen again.
I completely agree with you, and I would say to you that everybody should be writing their insurance companies as part of their letters and saying, we have another hurricane season coming in months. I have to have my house rebuilt before that. And you and I need to pick a day or several days or several hours in the coming months to have some shows on, okay, now you have gotten your money or you're starting to rebuild. Should you change your insurance policy? And I will explain to you what everybody should make sure they have in their policy and or suggest specific agents that have a lot of knowledge about these particular areas so people can make sure that they do have the right coverage and they learn about coverages they may not even know exist that are available to them.
Hugely, hugely important. Where did John go? Just like magic, he's just gone. What did he want to talk about, Rachel?
He wanted to know if Michael is eventually reclassified to that 5 status. The report is supposed to come out sometime this month. What happens to the hurricane deductibles that have already been paid?
Yeah, so there'll be some benefits to people, and depending on how they recheck that classification, they will be entitled to some refunds and some rebates. I'm surprised they haven't issued that reclassification because it should be a Category 5 storm, and it should have been classified that to begin with. But I get, when you're right on the borderline, I get some of the delays. There's probably some political issues involved there, too.
It was. Part of the delay was the government shutdown, so that pushed the report back.
Yeah, and maybe that's the case. Maybe not. But I can tell you that the reality is it should be a Category 5, and it should benefit those people who did pay deductibles and may now have waivers or other situations where they're going to be recompensed. So I'm eager to hear the results of that as soon as you are, and I can tell you that there'll probably be some more petitions that people will be able to file, and you call them supplemental claims or not, to get back their money, and there'll be probably some legal arguments about that too.
What specifically happens when it's reclassified as if it's reclassified as a 5? In other words, who will that affect positively?
Well, generally speaking, there is an argument that if you have a Category 5 storm, that some deductibles are waived or reduced, and it changes the way in which payments are considered depending upon how the finding comes out. So be eager to see how that turns out.
Scott Major's with Scott Major. The background with him is pretty interesting because, I've told everybody over and over that you've been handling insurance claims and insurance cases for over 30 years. How did you start? Let's go back to the beginning because I think your qualifications are, absurdly at the top. I mean, you started out working as an attorney on the insurance side, right?
Yes. Let me just finish that one thought on the Category 5 stuff.
No, I don't want to. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, most people won't have an impact on their deductibles. That's more of a rumor. You will get more federal funding that will pour in to the area as a result of that. But my background is that I've been on both sides of the aisle. I mean, my father was general counsel to the governor and then became a top appellate court judge. And so I grew up in a legal, kind of political legal family, very fascinating. And my father and mother still alive, wonderful, my best friends, good people. I ended up going to law school, and then I've done both plaintiff's work on the plaintiff side and defense work. I've represented major companies as well as individuals, and in a variety of different angles and avenues, and got the opportunity because I was beating the insurance companies so badly, I believe, that got retained by the insurance companies and then ended up being the chief counsel for one of the largest insurance companies in the world. Learned a lot about the way insurance works and the thought process for underwriting and the way in which policies are languaged, then returned over to the victim side and have utilized that to educate a lot of people. I have written 3 or 4 books, motivational books as well as legal books. I've done hundreds and hundreds of presentations, motivational speeches, and other things. I was always a big fan of trying to empower and take the knowledge that I was graced with by God, and to share that. I felt like it was, ordered for me to share the knowledge I have, and so I've derived a lot of personal pleasure out of knowing this stuff and being able to help and empower other people, to move to the next level of their life or to deal with strife or stress. And that empowerment has been very, very emotionally beneficial to me. It's really inspired me to continue, the goodness. I've been all over the country. I spent weeks and weeks, for example, after Hurricane Sandy in New York, on my own dime. I didn't make a penny up there, educating all kinds of city officials and local organizations and thousands of people in how to deal with the post-storm stuff. Aside from the, dozens of other storms of which I've given advice to everything from federal authorities to state officials to governments to individuals, businesses, religious organizations, and the like, trying to make a positive difference and impact people with the education they need in an area that few people know about. When you read these insurance policies and you realize that they are giant policies of exclusion, not inclusion, the first page or two are what they cover, the next 60 are what they don't. Understandably, that's a business that they have to run. That is the insurance business. You have to realize where you have legitimate rights. And Florida happens to be one of the strongest states to protect policyholders. And in those particular provisions are loads of statutory exceptions and other things that help people. And I felt like I could make a big difference in the world by educating them. And also, giving credit where credit is due, where there are insurance companies that have paid, billions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars after storms. That's not to take away from their payments by saying that they all should pay when they should pay. It's that every dollar that is contractually obligated to pay should be paid. And I feel as though there is a reluctance to get lawyers involved, and there's some stigma associated with that and some fear people have about lawyers that have been driven by a lot of people. In some cases, public adjusters don't like lawyers because they badmouth them and they say, oh, you don't need a lawyer, and a lawyer's going to cause you problems because they benefit. And then they end up hiring those lawyers after they can't get any more money. I'm not picking on them any more than I'm picking on a remediation company or anybody else. But I think the challenge to get lawyers involved ends up being delayed and stalled because people either don't perceive it or think that a lawyer is going to be expensive, or they don't need them, or they don't understand what they don't understand. And so I've tried to strive to educate people. There are benefits to adjusters and lawyers and handling the claims yourself, and trying to make a prolific difference, and really trying to feel as though, as you and I talk about all the time, am I making a difference? Am I doing something that you all feel is truly benefiting, the community, you, and educating people? And I think that is what all of us as human beings should strive to do, to be the best we can be, to share that kind of influence and knowledge or finances or whatever we have to share whenever we can, in a way that we think will positively affect other people and represent us as human beings in a way that is different than the typical mentality of everybody's about themselves. And I think that whether you call that religious or spiritual or just being good, I just think that is so important for mankind and so important for what right now is an incredibly divisive, and negative world where people are thinking about themselves and not others. And so I hope I'm making a difference, however small it may be, and I'm always going to continue to strive to try to educate and empower people in whatever way I can.
Nicely said, sir. Let me take a break. Phones are open for you. You got about another 10 minutes to hop on with Scott Major from Major Parúas and the Storm Help Team. 850-233-9988. To get in touch with Scott off the air, 844-800-LAWS. Very simple, 844-800-LAWS. More to come.
Kramer will be right back on NewsTalk at 101.
Scott Major from Major Parúas and the Storm Help Team with us. I'm going to throw you a curveball here real quick because I'm really interested in staying motivated when it comes to whatever. I watched a video the other day. It was of Tony Hawk. And Tony Hawk's 50 years old. He's a pro skater, and he was developing this new trick. And he goes, to the average person walking around, this doesn't look that difficult, but it is insanely difficult, and explained why. And they showed him doing this trick, trying to do it over and over and over again. And for hours and hours, he would not give up. He was motivated to do this one thing. And I mean, it kicked his butt physically, mentally, emotionally, but he wound up doing it. And there was a beautiful lesson in there about being motivated. And whatever motivates you. It doesn't matter if other people get it or not. It doesn't matter how simplistic it is or what side of the universe it's on. It could be parenting. It could be ping pong. It could be learning about history. Whatever the goal is, whatever the motivation is. And so I'm really curious about that. And I've read, in the past, read a lot of motivational books. And so I looked you up, and it says about the author, it says, Scott Major is a nationally renowned attorney, master motivator, and coach, and former professional athlete. Now, I read that you're a former professional athlete. So Rachel came in, and I go, what do you think he was a professional athlete at? Because it doesn't say. And so we started throwing out things, and we have come to the conclusion that we have guessed what kind of athlete or in what sport you were a pro athlete. Rachel, which one are you sticking with? This is an inside trivia thing.
Oh, man. There's so many to choose from.
But what did you wind up sticking with?
I was going to go with wrestling. Because Scott's a smaller, scrappy dude.
Okay.
He can get out of tough situations.
So you were going to go with wrestling.
But now I'm leaning more towards what you said.
So, well, it's not really a competition, but I just was curious. And then I thought, tennis. He looks like a tennis player, like a really good tennis player to me. And then Rachel said baseball, and I thought about baseball, but I don't, you're too feisty for baseball. Most of the people that play baseball are a little more low-key. You're not low-key.
I like the diving.
Or maybe something like that, like aquatic. All right, I'm sticking with tennis, though. And Rachel, final answer?
And the verdict is?
Rachel, what's your final?
Diving.
You're going with diving.
I'm going diving.
Ladies and gentlemen, the professional...
The verdict is...
Okay.
Tennis.
Was it really? Yes!
It was tennis.
Thank you! I knew it! I could see him being like John McEnroe and just going off on one of the umpires.
You were wrong on that call, sir, and here is exactly why.
That's right. Hugs and kisses my ass, he said.
Yeah, it's so funny.
So you played tennis for a long time, huh?
I did. I went to college on a tennis scholarship, and then went and played professionally before I went to law school. Got injured, tore some ligaments in my ankle, and then went off to law school. Thought I'd come back to tennis, and never did. Got a great job and loved it. Still love tennis, but really went the other route. Went the legal route and got an education and made my family, proud.
Isn't Bob our general manager? Isn't he a big tennis guy, or did I hear that wrong?
He's big on swimmer.
He's a big
swimming guy.
Yeah. So, I love the approach. The motivation stuff, and I just love your fire. And I think it's really important that people hear your passion. You start talking about the law. I think you've taken that motivation and put it where it needs to be to help people within the law, within the realm of post storms. These things affect so many people. And I want to give out your phone number so that people can call Scott Major, 844-800-LAWS, 844-800-LAWS, and stormhelpteam.org. Thanks for all the help, and thank you for being with us for through 6 months. We really appreciate it, Scott.
Hey, thanks so much, and I'm glad you guys think we're making a difference in the world and we're positively affecting people. I appreciate everything you guys are doing for the community.
Take care. Have a great rest of your day, Scott.
You too. Be well.
All right. See you later. There he is. Pro tennis player, motivation guy, author, and attorney, Scott Major. I got it right. Nailed it. Daddy nailed it.
This is live and local morning radio. This is Kramer.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.